Well, thank you, Esther and Marissa. My name is Dr. Jason Prystowsky. I already know a lot of you. For those of you who don't know me, I am a practicing emergency physician. I work at all three Cottage campuses. I'm the medical director for Santa Barbara City Fire. I also work with Santa Barbara County Public Health and have a very diverse background in humanitarian aid and conflict, public health, and medical education. So I do want to give a shout out to Good Space, because for those of you who do work in the ER may have remembered early in the pandemic, we were broadcasting community-based webinars, and Micah let us use this space to do it. So me, Dr. Kristen Fontes, Dr. Morgane Daniels broadcasted these evidence-supported communities. So you may have recognized these little pods with Morgane and Kristen yelling at me from across the other pod, like we always banter at each other. But this is a great workspace. So if you're looking for a place to study for the MCAT or to get away from the all of the noise of the library, it's a cool. This wasn't here when I went to UCSB. So anyway, this is me. This is my email if you want to email. I want to jump right in. So we're going to kind of go through this really fast. I'm just going to just show of hands. How many of you are interested in a career in healthcare? How many of you med school, nursing school, PA school, public health school, undecided, but you definitely want to help people? Okay, cool. I can work with that. So anyway, I always start every talk with this photograph. If you took my underserved medicine seminar, you'll recognize it. This photograph I took on the border of the Congo, Rwanda, Uganda border. That is a quote-unquote safe water depot. That was a source of our Shigella outbreak. You can see a young Lugandan boy. He's there. He's not wearing any shoes, which is important because he has hookworm, where if you took Kunis's parasitology class, you know that an adult female hookworm can drink 0.5 mLs of blood per day. He probably has a worm burden of about 90 adult worms. Plus, he gets malaria every rainy season, and he's iron deficient, which means he's anemic, which means he will never excel in school and never lift himself out of poverty. And then in the background, you have this church. This was a really important church, and I'm not going to say anything faith-based, but this church was a big headache for me because we had a measles outbreak. Measles is a real illness. It is one of the more contagious viruses out there with an R naught of 25, where if you've been following pandemic, you know what that means. And the preacher at this church had a generator so everyone could come plug in their mobile phones while they went to Mass. And if you've been to sub-Saharan Africa, you know that no one has running water or electricity, but everyone has a mobile phone. And he was telling everyone that vaccines are a ploy to sterilize black people brought in by white imperialists. So the great challenge of your career as the future leaders of healthcare is the epidemic of misinformation. So I put this in here as a constant reminder that I'm going to give you the best available data. I'm going to fire it at you, bam, 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 bam. If you want a copy of these lecture slides, email Esther or Marissa, or you guys can, my only ask is at the end I have a picture of my son. I've kept his face off of social media and the internet. So just whatever you post online, don't post any pictures of him. Otherwise, use this. My goal is for you to succeed. Okay, so moving right along. Whoop. There we go. Okay. So quick objectives. This is going to be a very fast introduction to the alphabet soup that is careers in healthcare. I'm going to provide a little bit of an introduction to what you need to be thinking about for medical school. Talk briefly about what medical schools are looking for, and just look at numbers. For those of you who don't know me, again, I'm in public health. I go where the numbers take me. It's never personal. I'm going to say some things that are going to offend you. I'm sorry if they sound offensive, but I go where the numbers take me. And coming from California, you're at a disadvantage, and that's just the reality. And then we're going to get a little existential, because I like to identify as an existential philosopher. So all these wonderful questions you have to ask yourself in the mirror again and again. And then you have some people here who are patient care techs working in the ER, scribes working in the ER, the chief scribe. We have the UCSB healthcare advisor. So please chime in. The goal of this is to be a discussion. I want to make sure that you have the information you need to ask the right questions. So, moving right along, this is the definition of health, all right? The pharmaceutical industry and the medical education industrial complex will have you believe otherwise, but according to the 1948 Geneva Conventions, health is not just the absence of disease or infirmity, but a state of physical, mental, and social well-being. And if any of you have been alive in the last 2 years, you know that we physically, psychologically, and socially are unwell. So at the end of the day, if you're going into whatever alphabet soup you're going to go into, health is the goal, whether you're talking about individuals or populations. So what letters do you want after your name, right? This is the alphabet soup, right? And it gets really ugly and really complicated. And if you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 50 different answers. So again, please fact check me. This whole thing is referenced, but we're going to go through a few of these just to give you an idea, because as a young professional, your goal is to find personal, social, and professional nirvana, right? You want to go to work and have a sense of fulfillment, that you're making the world a better place, that you yourself are becoming more whole, and you're going home to a family and a community and a village that loves you and you love, and you're able to make that village better, right? Now, maybe for some of you, that's to be a surgeon. Maybe for others, you're going to be a psychologist. Maybe some of you are going to be a social worker. The goal is do that which fills your cup. Or, as my hero Albert Schweitzer says, I don't know what your destiny will be, but I know one thing I do know is the ones among you who are really happy are the ones who have sought and found how to serve. So we are ultimately public servants. So moving right along. Medical degree. This is what most of you said you wanted to do, right? That's why. Medical school is 4 years. It is a professional degree. The United States, it's a degree you go after university. Most places in the world, it's a 6-year undergraduate degree. You apply to medical school out of high school. You're going to take the medical college admissions test. We're going to talk about the MCAT, right? It is a mythical feline beast that sucks your soul through your eyes. No one does well on the MCAT. Everyone only does well enough. We're going to talk a little bit about what undergrad courses are required for entry. And ultimately, medical school, when my grandfather went to medical school, you go to medical school, you do an internship, and then you're ready to start healing people. Now, you think you're in this game, right? The game of being pre-med, and once you play the game well, you're going to get to med school, and then all the games are done, you're going to learn how to heal. Wrong. In a lot of ways, medical school is another game you have to play to get the residency you want. Residency is ultimately where you specialize, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Most medical school layouts are this. Now, medical schools are going to play, and when you start applying and interviewing, you're going to see some medical schools are going to change the way they look the first 2 years. Ultimately, most medical schools are year 1, how the body works. Year 2, how the body breaks. Year 3, all the different clerkship rotations. You're going to do a little bit of pediatrics, a little bit of medicine, a little bit of surgery, a little bit of OB, a little bit of psychiatry. By the way, for those of you who haven't heard me say this, psychiatry is the most important clerkship rotation of medical school. Because no matter what you go into, you will take care of people who are psychologically unwell. You will work alongside them. You will at some point feel that and suffer that. So it's the only thing that really spans everything. And then year 4, you're going to do internships and electives. Okay? Residency is going to depend on what you specialize in. If you want to be a pediatrician, you're doing 4 years med school plus 3 years of residency. If you want to be a neurosurgeon, you're going to do 4 years of med school plus 7 years of residency. If you want to be a pediatric neurosurgeon who specializes in the brain, you're looking at additional fellowship years. So all of this comes into play because, again, I'm not selling you anything. I just want you to make informed decisions. And ultimately, you have a life to live, and you want to know where it is you're going to be 10, 15 years from now. Anyone know who this is, by the way? Almost. Bones McCoy, right? He's the doctor on the Starship Enterprise. All right. Here's my other TV hero. Everyone know who this is? Hawkeye Pierce, that's right. If any of you guys want to watch the best show ever made, don't go to Grey's Anatomy. That's crap. MASH. It's still the best show ever made. The first season, Sometimes You Hear the Bullet, changed my life, changed cinematic history. We can talk about that afterwards if you want. Anyway, here's what we need to know. Medical school is competitive. There are 154 accredited. By the way, I haven't updated these slides since 2019. So if anything changed in the pandemic, I'm sorry, disclaimer given. But as of 2019, 154 US accredited med schools, 35 accredited DO schools, which may mean nothing to you now, but it will, 17 accredited Canadian medical schools, and we have a relationship so you can go to medical school in Toronto and come right over and get into a US residency and not be considered an FMG, which is not a bad word, it just means a foreign medical grad. And for those of you who are thinking about going to medical school in the Caribbean or outside the country, we're going to talk about that. As of 2017, 52,000 people competing for 21,000 spots, average of 16 applications per applicant, 40% admission overall, which dropped. I don't know what the pandemic's going to do because in some ways medical school's sexier, but in other ways we're seeing the mass migration. We're going to talk about burnout. The AMA published a report in 2021, December, 1 in 5 physicians who finished their training within the last 3 years is actively looking for a career outside of medicine. So I don't know how this is going to affect enrollments. But these are the numbers. Again, remember when you look at the numbers, they are as you interpret them to be. You have to take context. Overall average GPA 3.7, average science GPA 3.6, average non-science GPA 3.79. I say that these are national averages. You're coming from California. What does that mean? California has the most university students being graduating and the fewest medical spots for physicians we train for the population we need to serve, which means a lot of people from California are looking for medical schools outside of California. So when you look at the national data, and again, I'm sorry if you find this offensive, just know you have to be better than that. These are the numbers. Sorry to tell you that. International schools vary a lot in quality. And I have a special slide dedicated to Caribbean medical schools because that is a for-profit education program that's, it is what it is, and if you're going to go into it, go with eyes wide open. Sometimes you can have difficulty getting into the United States depending on where you go. Okay? Here's some other famous people in cinematic history. You guys all know who that is, right? But do you know who that is? No, almost. That's from the TV show ER. When I went to UCSB, every Thursday night we would watch ER. George Clooney was Doug Ross. That's Peter Benton, who is the surgeon badass. So 8.2% of applicants are black or African American, 6.2% are Hispanic, 0.2% are American Indian, and 47% of medical school graduates are women. So in some ways, we are achieving more equity. In other ways, we are not representing the populations that we actually have to take care of, especially the vulnerable populations we have to take care of, which is interesting for all of the women here. My grandmother graduated from University of South Carolina in Charleston as the only woman in her class, third woman to ever graduate. She was called into the dean's office because she was the top student in the class and told that she needed to dial it down because she was hurting the morale of the class. So in some ways, we've come a long way, but in other ways, we need your leadership to take us to the next step. Continuing, we talk about good things and bad things, right? Here's the bad things. Average debt, $192,000, it's going up. Mostly because of predatory loans, but also because of predatory schools. The whole idea is once you go to medical school, you're easy to loan money to because you're going to make a job where you can pay it back. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to pay that back. There's a book I'm going to recommend you read. I don't have any stock in this company. I don't know the person. It's called The White Coat Investor. I wish I'd read that when I was a medical student because he talks a lot about how to think financially because as physicians, we are really bad with money. Most private schools, $57,000 per year. Public, $35,000 per year, so the University of California is a good deal if you get into one of the UC systems. But also, tuitions are always going up. You can, if you know you want to do primary, how many of you guys want to do primary care? Family medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN, psychiatry. How many know you want to do primary care in a resource-poor environment? Cool. So the National Health Service Corps will pay off your loans year for year, but you have to pay it back. So if you know you want to take care of, go to the Native Americans. I go out to the Navajo Nation every 3 months to work, and there's a lot of people that go there and do primary pediatrics or primary care, and they have to go there for 4 years to get all their loans paid off, and they get a competitive salary. So that's a way to pay for med school. Military also will pay year for year. Now, I have a lot of friends that were on the military scholarship. My only advice is, ultimately, you pay your bills. You either pay in debt over the span of 30 years, or you pay with your pound of flesh, okay? And as for what is more valuable, years of your life or writing a check every year for the next 30 years, there's no way to calculate that. If you come from a military family and you like the military, it opens up a lot of opportunities. Working on military bases all over the world is kind of a great, cool opportunity. If you have an authority problem and don't like keeping your boots shiny, this is not a great way for you to pay for medical school. So again, it's that look at the mirror, look at yourself. The goal is for you to be happy and fulfilled. Okay, Oh, some more of the numbers. So some more badness. We're going to talk about the good. Don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. I like to get the bad out of the way first, okay? And again, these are just the numbers. So we already went through this, 52,000 for 21,000 spots. Medical schools will accept about 5% of applicants. 41% of students who apply will get in. 54% are bio majors, 9 physical science majors, 10% social science majors, 3.54% humanities majors. Any philosophy or literature majors in the crowd? Oh, yeah, I got my eye on you. Talk to me afterwards. So a lot of people say, what course should I take for the MCAT? It doesn't matter. But according to the numbers, 75% take some commercial MCAT course. Kaplan, Princeton Review, YouTube, TikTok, whatever. You know your study type, and if you have to be put on a study agenda to take this test in 6 months, taking a course is one way to do it. If you have a lot of self-discipline and noise-canceling headphones, you can come to Good Space, lock yourself in a cubicle, say bye to your friends, and then say hi to them again in 6 months. Whatever works for you, all right? So this is 2018 data. So after you finish med school, you go through this whole other game where you apply to residency. And it's a process called the match. And that's a totally different lecture that I give to medical students. Just know that if you go to a US medical school, you are very likely, 73% get one of their top 3 choices for residency. So literature, what do you want to be when you grow up? Pediatrician. So literature, he's finished his medical school and he has got interviewed at Harvard, Stanford, and Hopkins. Just based on the fact that he finished med school, he has a 73% chance of getting one of those top 3. Now that goes down depending on specialty. Let's say literature here said he wanted to do dermatology, right? Lots of money, no nights, no weekends, no insurance, just Botox and cosmetics. Then it becomes much more competitive. So thinking about what you're going to go into, some specialties are more competitive than others, and a lot of times that's financially and lifestyle driven. Okay, DO school. So a lot of people look at the numbers and say, oh, I don't need as high of a GPA to get into DO school, so I'm just going to apply to DO school, but they have no idea what it is. And the whole idea of osteopathic medicine was founded by this old, angry white guy here, Dr. Andrew Still. There are 35 accredited schools. The whole idea of osteopathic medicine, and understand, I respect osteopathic medicine, but I don't understand it. It's not what I do. It has everything you need to know for allopathic medicine, plus osteopathic manipulations, laying hands on people. I did residency with a good friend of mine in emergency medicine who is a DO. And when someone would come in with a migraine headache, I immediately am thinking about medications. She's thinking about massaging the occipital nerve as a way to relieve pain. Does it work? Actually, it does. Do I know how to do it? I don't. So as of the difference between MD and DO, a lot of people say, don't go to DO school, it's not real school. Look at who's giving you the advice, because as of recently, in 2014, the governing body that looks over MDs and DOs has merged. A lot of DOs do MD residencies. Medical students cannot do DO residencies. And a lot of the old guard philosophy has changed. That being said, if you know you want to do a surgical subspecialty, if you know you want to be a retinal surgeon, you might want to consider MD more than DO, because DO focuses on the whole person approach. So DO schools really want you to do something primary care, looking at the whole person, not just a small piece of anatomy. But when you actually look at the numbers, the average MCAT score is lower, the average GPA is lower. It can be slightly less competitive, but do it for the right reasons. If you do apply to DO school, one of your letters of recommendation needs to come from a DO. So if you know, hey, this whole idea of laying hands on people and touching them and using touch as a form of the healing process, I identify with that. And I want to do primary care. So you need to start thinking about DOs in the community who you can connect with, because one of your letters has to be from a DO, or you have to be applying from a resource-poor area where no DOs exist. And if you're in Santa Barbara, this is not a resource-poor area. So you need a better excuse. I want to make sure we fly through this so we give enough time for Chasen. This is Norman Rockwell before the shot. You can see, I love art and poetry, so a lot of the scribes in the ER have to endure my rambles at 1 o'clock in the morning. But you can see this young boy here is about to get his vaccine, which we all know is good science, right? and he's studying the credentials of his pediatrician. I know most of you are here to talk about MD. I do want to talk a little bit about the RN path, because it is not, if you choose you want to be an RN, MDs and RNs are different. It's not one's better than another. And you need to think within yourself. The biggest question that I always ask is lifestyle and proximity, right? And we're going to talk about this some more. A lot of times the MDs are the ones that are coming up with a plan, but the RNs are the one at the bedside holding their hand, giving their medications, talking them through the procedure. And if that is you, know that at the end of the day, you may be happier being an RN than being an MD. Because you're looking at investing years of your life. So you want to make sure that your time and money investment is going for something that's going to give you fulfillment and make you a happier, more complete person. So by far and away, RNs are the biggest workhorse body in the house of medicine. You can get a BSN or a bachelor's or an associate RN. It's the largest occupation in healthcare. We're seeing a mass resignation of nurses, and because of that, the nursing lifestyle, there are travel nurses that go to Colorado during ski season, California during surf season, and then go to New York during theater season. And they just do their travel assignments based around their lifestyle. It's 2 years of training versus 10, and right now there is such a nursing shortage, you can pretty much pay your ticket. And I say that not to instill doubt, but if you're the kind of person that has other things in life that you want to do, climb mountains, have a rock band, start a family, this is the only gender equity statement I will make is women, you have an expiration date for starting a family, men do not. And when you're thinking about what career you're going to go into, you have to think in the back of your mind, okay, at some point, if you're going to want to start a family, do you want to be a neurosurgery resident working 100 hours a week in the hospital, or do you already want to be established in your career? And there's no right or wrong way to say it. I'm sorry that our patriarchal system has set it up this way. I really am. And we're working on fixing it. We need your help. But those are some of the realities that you might want to think about in the back of your head. There is a huge diversity of specialties in nursing. There's a lot of nurses that work anything from school nurses to being on helicopters in critical care, being in the ER, being in the ICU. And this is my favorite nurse. This is my wife, Lauren. I do everything she tells me to do. That's like, they always say, doctors save lives, nurses save doctors. Some of you may be thinking about being an advanced practice nurse, okay? And this is where we're going to get into some kind of dodgy political waters, because now there are all these programs where nurses can go on to become a nurse practitioner and work in a primary care, or can be a nurse midwife and deliver babies, can do everything an OBGYN can do except C-sections and surgical procedures. Nurse anesthetists can work with anesthesiologists and put people under for anesthesia and they make good financial money. Oftentimes, and it varies state by state, how much autonomy advanced practice nurses get depends on what state you're in. And the nursing lobby in Sacramento is very strong. And recently there was some legislation passed that said that nurse practitioners should have autonomous practice. Now, whether you agree with this or not, know that there's a huge difference in training, right? As a physician, you're going to have 7 to 10 years of training. As a nurse practitioner, you're going to have 2 to 5. This may be something, if the nursing philosophy appeals to you, something to consider. Because we're talking mostly about medical degrees, I'm not going to go into some of the, but there's a lot of advanced practice nurses out there. These slides are available to you, so if this is something that really sings to you, meet with some advanced practice nurses, meet with some advisors and some mentors to think about your career. Does anyone know William Carlos Williams? Anyone take any poetry classes? He wrote The Red Wheelbarrow, a very famous poem. They probably made you memorize it in high school. How many people had to memorize that in high school, The Red Wheelbarrow? Yeah, all right. William Carlos Williams is a pediatrician in New Jersey who is best known for his simplicity style of poetry. And he used to write poems on prescription pads in between seeing patients. And a lot of his poems, when you start doing medicine, you're going to really revel in their simplicity. We sit and talk quietly with long lapses of silence, and I am aware of the stream that has no language coursing beneath the quiet heaven of your eyes, which has no speech. I like to think he was talking to someone who was experiencing a stroke. And that was it's one of the more compassionate things you can do is connect with someone when they're not able to talk to you. Anyone interested in being a PA? Maybe? Okay, good. So there are 265 accredited PA programs out there, and the training can range anywhere from 2 to 3 years. I think USC is 3 years and Toro's 2 years. Overall, GPA is less. You have to take the GRE rather than the MCAT, although I think some PA schools will accept the MCAT. You might have to fact check me on that. But here's the big thing. It's 2,000 clinical, you need 2,000 clinical hours before you even apply. And the whole specialty was built on having previous work, okay? So if you think like, hey, you know what, I'm really smart, I'm a UCSB grad, and I'm just gonna go to PA school because that way I can be done in 2 years rather than 10, like that's the wrong way to think about it. I'm gonna go forward one slide because the foundation of the PA specialty was built on this old angry white guy here, Eugene Stead at Duke, because after Vietnam, there were all these returning servicemen, corpsmen, and army medics, and they had 10 years of medical experience. And then when they entered the civilian workforce, the highest entry level was being a medical assistant. And he's like, no, we need to take that 10 years of experience and make them a better contributing member of the healthcare team. And that's where PAs came from. And I can tell you, once I worked up in Washington State, I had a PA with me who was a vascular surgeon in Afghanistan, but evacuated during the Soviet occupation. And he could either redo his surgery vascular residency for 5 to 7 years or do 2 years of PA school. So he went to PA school. And man, that guy was smart, and I learned so much from him. But he's the kind of guy that a PA schools are made for. So if you're thinking about being a PA school, understand you have to have that 2,000 clinical hours before you step foot. Some PA schools really respect being a scribe. Some don't. I personally think being I'm sure Chasen will talk about this, being a scribe gives you a lot of insight into the language of medicine, but it doesn't give you experience on that hands-on approach, which is so important. Demographic, more women than men, more white than non-white, and 31% of applicants get into a PA program. So it's becoming more competitive. And again, autonomy is going to depend on what state you're in. So, turf wars. There's a lot of turf wars right now, and I'm not going to get into the politics of it because ultimately, if you want to apply to MD school, PA school, or NP school, you need to know the landscape you're walking into. And there are a lot of nurse practitioners that are saying we should be giving the same autonomy and rights as physicians. There are a lot of PAs that say we should be having the same rights and autonomy as physicians more than nurse practitioners, and there's a lot of fighting. I am a community organizing activist. I believe I don't care who's in charge as long as patients get the best quality care available. So just know that there's a lot happening right now in Washington, D.C. and in Sacramento about who has autonomy, who doesn't, who needs physician oversight, who doesn't. So know what that landscape looks like before you apply. Don't be caught off guard. Do your homework before you do that. Stop me if there are ever any questions. I'm seeing you nodding. I don't know if you're going to sleep or if you're validating you're paying attention. No? Okay. And anytime, go get more pizza, too, because carbs are delicious, and at your age, you should indulge while you can. I have a master's degree in public health. I think an MPH is a great complement degree. And this is, again, I'm very transparent whenever I try to market, and this is me being a salesman. Like, we need more clinicians who are PAs, RNs, and physicians who also understand the language of public health. Whereas a physician will see diabetes, blood sugar high. A public health person will look at populations and say, wait a second, this whole community in the east side of Santa Barbara doesn't have access to fresh produce and is only eating bad nutrition. That's why there's so much child obesity and diabetes, right? It's looking at health, right? State of complete physical, psychological, social well-being through a different lens, looking at communities rather than individuals. And if the pandemic has not hammered home the point, we're only as healthy as our community, we're only as healthy as our neighbors. And it's important to be able to put different hats on. And for those of you who work with me in the ER will see me do this from time to time, where I'll put on my EMS paramedic hat, or I'll put on my physician hat, or I'll put on my public health hat, because it's important to always look at health through different lenses. And this is a master's degree that's oftentimes a supplement and will give you more insight into research, community health, or academia. Don't let schooling get in the way of your education. Mark Twain, arguably the greatest English American novelist. Him and Hemingway, both honorary mention. So, what is the right degree for you? Right? You all came here, it's Wednesday, you could be at study hall right now or at Wildcat, but instead you're eating Costco pizza, going, what? Okay, why am I here? So when you're thinking about what to go into, proximity to patient, right? Do you like being right up there next to someone holding their hand? If that's you, nursing, right? They're the ones who are doing the hand holding, right? The people are sitting back, scratching their chins, coming up with a plan, more cerebral. Are you a thinker or a doer? If you're a thinker, you may be a physician, or if you're a doer, you may be a nurse or a surgeon, right? And these are questions you have to ask yourself, because at the end of the day, it's not about impressing mom and dad or impressing me. It's about you being happy and fulfilled. And knowing what it is that just gets you pumped in the morning is going to help you find a rewarding, fulfilling career. Do you have an area of interest? I was talking to Esther, we were talking a little bit about psychology. Maybe psychiatry is psychiatry, you get to go through medical school and then work with those who are mentally ill, and you have that whole medical background, so it gives you a unique lens of looking at it. How many years of training are you willing to endure? If you hate school, maybe med school's not for you. It's a lot of school. I read 30 to 45 minutes a day just to stay current, because medicine's always changing. If you're someone that just doesn't like reading science journals, maybe medical school's not for you. I mean, I'm just being honest. You have to go into it with your eyes wide open. Options for alternative careers. I'm an emergency physician. I've done all kinds of weird stuff in my career that even now my wife still thinks I'm not telling the truth when I tell some stories. I'll show you some pictures of that. I couldn't do that if I were a cardiothoracic surgeon who required an entire infrastructure around me just to be able to do what I'm trained to do. Right? So if you think you want to use your degree as a passport to travel and see the world, have that play in. Location on the food chain. Some people have to be the boss. If that's you, you may not be happy as an RN or a PA. These are questions, but if you're one of those people who say, I just want to be part of a good functioning team with great outcomes, I don't have to be the quarterback, I'm happy just throwing the blocks as long as we get the ring at the end and get the touchdown at the end, great, but these are questions you have to ask yourself. Salary, job security, again, and I say this, and it hurts me to say this, but 10 years ago, I would have told you, hey, no matter what you do in healthcare, you're always going to be able to put food on the table. No, you are disposable. Nurses are disposable, doctors are disposable. The pandemic has shown us that. Private equity groups are taking over hospital chains and multi-specialty groups, and just because you have an MD, you can be very easily disposed of. And that's a harsh reality that you might want to think about while taking on financial debt. And I'm sorry, but the pandemic, now will the pendulum swing, and are we going to get nationalized health care, and we're going to actually get a system that's not about disease management, but actually promotion of health? Gosh, I hope so. Maybe one of you is going to be the creative architect to build it. But this is the reality of where we are now. And I just want you to go into all this with your eyes wide open. Personal goals, right? Do you want to have a family? Do you want to have kids? Geography. Are you one of these people that just, you have to be near a beach? Well, if you know that you want to be like a very specific, I always throw pediatric neurosurgeons under the bus because a friend of mine's one. But if you know you want to be a pediatric neurosurgeon, well, guess what? Once you go through that 14, 15 years of training, you're going to go wherever there's a hospital that can support what you're trained to do. And that hospital might not be in San Diego or Honolulu. It might be in Iowa. So, these are things you just have to think about if geography is important to you. Mobilities. Do you have hobbies? Are you interested in other things? I have friends of mine that are so into music, and he just wants to play in his rock band, and he just shows up to work because he has to. So this is the 36 Views of Mount Fuji by Hokusai, a very famous Japanese block artist. And I always like to put this as a reminder that art teaches us about life, because Mount Fuji is in every single one of these images. But it's not always the subject, and sometimes you're even on the summit, you don't even know you're there. But Mount Fuji is always there. So whatever you do, you can be involved with making people healthier. It doesn't always have to be the big MD. So is there a physician shortage? Yes and no. So the Balanced Budget Act of 1997 capped the federally funded residencies at the 1996 level. So where you go to your residency is funded by the HCFA tax that's taken out of your paycheck when you work at Starbucks. Okay, and the Council of Graduate Medical Education began to increase medical school sizes in 2000. All this math is going to become important to you because we're going to start talking about Caribbean schools here in a little bit. So bear with me with the math. So by 2025, there's going to be a shortage of 124,000 physicians. I think this is incorrect. I think it's probably going to be closer to 50% primary care because everyone wants to go into subspecialty by now. And all of this is going to actually play into the foreign medical grads. But most of them are going to require this. And actually, you don't have to finish college to get into med school. There are some people that do really well their first 3 years and then apply and get in. So those are the requirements. Ways, and this is another questionnaire from 2018. How do people prepare for medical school? Well, 92% volunteer to work in the healthcare field. I think, how many of you guys volunteer to work in the healthcare field? Okay, good. So this is a reflection of the audience. 61% took an MCAT course. This is different than the other study. It says 75%. 55% did some kind of lab research apprenticeship. And these are the numbers. I think everyone who applies to med school should have some experience in research because it's important to be able to read a scientific paper. But it's also okay to be in a lab and say, you know what, I want to work with people. Research does not sing to me, but thank you for this opportunity. Because ultimately, again, at the end of the day, it's going to make you a better, more understanding physician. 7% did a post-bac program to strengthen their academic skills. Here's a great, sorry, I don't have a lot of women poets and novelists, and I need to do that and also better represent the global south. But here's one of my favorite women American poets. The surgeon must be careful when they take the knife. Underneath their fine incisions lies the culprit, life. So the MCAT was redone in 2015 to have 4 sections. It's longer. Each section is 90 to 95 minutes. With lunch, it's a 7-hour day. It's all done online. When I went to UCSB in the 90s, I took the MCAT in the summer in Gervets, and it was around the time of cheerleading camp. So I remember taking the MCAT, and all the 15-year-olds were cheering, walking by, and someone screamed and said some expletives and ran out, which is also a really horrible commentary on our medical education industrial complex. So, and this is all, like, when you start getting into the MCAT, just know it is a standardized test. If you're good at taking standardized tests, you'll do well in the MCAT. It is a game. This game has rules. You can take a course. You can watch YouTubes. Whatever way you study that works for you is what you should do. But it is a necessary hoop to jump through, and you have to do well enough on it. How many times did you take the MCAT? One 2018 study. Of the students accepted in 2018, 67% took it once, 22% took it twice, 8% took it 3 or more times. Anyone in here have taken it already? Yeah? Anyone here who's taken it have anything positive to say about the experience? No? Oh, what do you have to say, Drill?
I've never felt more focused and industrious until the end of it.
There we go. That's a nice Csikszentmihalyi moment where you can focus all of your being on that one task in front of you, and you can walk into the 7-hour test and walk out and feel like it was only 5 minutes because you're so focused. I don't have words in your mouth. Anyone else? Any of the other people who have taken the MCAT have comments about it? Yeah, Aaron?
It's like really hard to transition afterwards. I found like going away, like after studying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for those who are watching the recording, Maren said it's hard to transition because you spend like 6 to 8 hours studying a day, and then you take this test. And then, like a lot of things in life, when you climb the mountain, when you achieve the goal, it's that Buddhist cycle, like, okay, now we need to set the goalpost somewhere else, right? And in some ways, it's very anticlimactic, which I've heard people say a lot of. Yeah, did you have anything else to add, Josephine? Oh, so you're in the limbo period.
I did. I just want to like move on and
Yep.
do other things in my life. But,
Okay.
And then the other thing was like when you get started, you just need to get the ball rolling, and really the momentum takes you
So Josephine is one of our patient care techs in the ER. I'm just repeating everything for the people who are watching the recording, and I'm mic'd and loud. That is, when you first start studying, you just have to start and just get into the flow, and then the momentum will go. And then one of the hard parts is they don't give you your score right away. You have to wait 30 days in limbo. Yeah, it's all a big psychological mind copulation. Average MCAT scores, again, coming from California, yours have to be higher. And then test prep. There's online practice exams, MCAT courses, private tutoring, getting advice from a health advisor. There's a lot of ways to do it. Do whatever works for you. Any other comments for those of you? I didn't take I took the old MCAT where I had to write the writing sample by hand. So any other comments for those that, yeah, Jabril?
Just a headspace thing. I'm going to make a metaphor to something I heard from a professional rock climber, and it was that every day this rock climber approached the same route, the same slab of rock, it was a different climb. Because he presented, his heart was in different places, his mind was in different places. MCAT's the exact same way. So once you get to your practice, don't be disheartened by fluctuations, but don't follow the trajectory you want. Stay consistent and stay confident. You guys are all going to be great.
So the poet philosopher Jabril was just comparing the MCAT to climbing the face of El Capitan, which is that every day you see the same rock, but you take a different route, and it's because you're a different person, and it's a mental challenge that ultimately adds to your resilience and your character and makes you a better physician if you approach it with the right mindset. But this is not a self-help workshop. We're not talking about growth mindset, which all of you should read. It's a great book. But ultimately, everything in Stoic philosophy is an opportunity to make you better, including the MCAT, which is the true shitty kitty, not the wildcat, the MCAT. This is Rudolf Virchow, who's the founder of The Cell, but also the founder of social medicine. He came up with this very provocative, preposterous idea that poverty is associated with poor health. Pretty provocative, huh? Medicine is a social science. Politics is nothing but medicine on a grand scale. This is a picture I took in a classroom in Haiti. So here's the process. You're going to make the decision to apply for the right reasons because all of you have volunteered, shadowed, worked. You've been around mentors. You've gotten advice. Your mentors have taken you out for coffee, lunch, whiskey, Zoom, and if you've had great dialogue. You've talked to your advisor. You've done your homework. You know how competitive you are. David is here in the back, who's one of the new UCSB pre-med advisors. You saved a lot of money because applying to med school is expensive, and you're still a student, and there's a big market on exploiting you. And Zoom was great because you didn't have to buy a suit, but when I applied, I had to buy a suit that I couldn't afford, and I had to buy plane tickets to go interview, and I felt uncomfortable in a suit. I still do. You have to take the MCAT, which also costs money, and then you got to get letters of recommendation. So here's my advice for getting letters of recommendation. Always ask early. Rolling admissions, right? Admissions start in June, which means, and I always ask of my students, I need 2 months. You got to give me a 2 months heads up. So don't say, hey, I need a letter of recommendation, can you turn it in next week? And I always ask, when the world was open, I would ask for a folder. Now everything's digital. But I always ask for a copy of the CV, your CV or resume, your unofficial transcript, and a cover letter that includes how we know each other, for how long, and any stories you want me to include in the letter. Because I write 10 to 20 letters a year. You may remember a patient we saw together in the ER. I don't remember what scribe or tech I was working with. So tell me, help me advocate for you. Primary application, again, it's rolling admissions. Throw a realistic net. The national average is 13. David, what's the national, do you know the national average here in California? I don't. It's somewhere in the high 20s, low 30s. And I don't know if anyone's in the process now, but most students I talk to, a realistic net is about 30 schools. You're going to spend $170 for your first school and $39 each additional school. I don't know if you guys are doing the math, but if you're applying to 30 schools, I'm always looking for babysitters. Find a job. Secondary application. Again, lots of ways for schools to exploit you. They say, okay, you've passed the cut. We like you enough to go out on a second date. Now they're going to give you a secondary. It's going to be $50 to $150 per school. Then you're going to interview. Then you're going to pick the school. And then you're going to go into the next phase of your journey. I'm going to skip this poem, but if you get a chance to, look it up online. John Stone was one of my mentors where I trained at Emory. He was the dean of admissions at Emory. It was also a cardiologist and a poet. And this is an epic poem that was the graduation address to the 1987 Emory School of Medicine class. And it's very powerful, especially for those who are in medicine now and like volunteering. Each line in there is poetic. So, my advice on medical school, again, here it is, the big climax of the talk. Go to medical school for the right reasons. Choose a major you like, one that gets you excited, not one you think is going to get you in. Study bio because you like it. Work in a lab because you like it. You are starting on an amazing journey. Embrace it. Be realistic about how to balance your personal and professional goals. I have a game that I play that my residents and medical students have endearingly called it the Prystowsky napkin talk, where I take my residents to a bar, we get out a bar napkin, and I draw a grid of personal goals, professional goals, short-term, long-term, and I start asking questions and I write down their answers. And I say, okay, here's your life arc. Like, this is what when I ask you questions about what's important to you, this is how you answered them. So adjust your life so that you can maximize what gives you value and minimize regrets. Be a good person. I shouldn't have to say this, but this is post-pandemic, right? Don't exploit people. Be a good person. Pursue wisdom, integrity, service, virtue. Live your life of character. Every day is an opportunity to make yourself a better person, whether it be learning something new, finding a new skill set, looking at something a new way. Embrace Buddhist and Stoic philosophy. Be a good person. The rest will follow. Be ready for 4 tough and rewarding years. It's hard. You're going to feel isolated and depressed. But you will make lifelong friendships. Some of my best friends in life, who, if you took any of my underserved medicine seminars, you probably met some of them, are amazing, extraordinary men and women who have changed the world and made the world a better place for so many people. And it's just an honor to be their friend and to be able to have dirt on them that no one else can ever know. So now they have to be my friend. And you get to serve your fellow human being during their worst time in their life, which is something that is a true privilege. I work in the ER. When I go to work tomorrow, that's just another day in the office for me. But that's someone else's worst day of their life, and I get the privilege to be there at the bedside. And that is a true privilege that very few people have, that a lot of movie stars make careers out of pretending to be that person. When you go to medical school, you get to be that person. And that's really, really cool. Go to a city or place where you're going to be happy. Happy medical students are more productive, take better care of patients. When you start applying to med school, and these are the gems, these are not in any of the books, look at the residency programs. And the reason I say that is your medical school experience, I don't care if someone who won the Nobel Prize in physiology is giving you a lecture your first year. The person that's going to help you make the physician you're going to be is the one that teaches you how to deliver babies at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's going to be a resident. Or the one who's going to teach you how to do a newborn exam in the nursery because you want to be a pediatrician. That's going to be a resident. So look at the residency programs that are affiliated with the medical schools you're applying to. Look at the hospital. Patients are our best teachers. I'm going to say it a second time. Patients are our best teachers. So I don't care what medical schools are ranked. Big, burly public hospitals will give you an extraordinary education because you get to see lots of patients, have lots of patient interactions. And then ask yourself, look at yourself in the mirror. Am I someone who likes to watch or someone who likes to just dive in and do? And pick the medical school that's going to give you the opportunities that cater the best to your learning style. Magazine rankings are very misleading. The only magazine rank that I ever look at is there's one column that says what residency directors think of the medical school. And that's the one that's important to me. And the reason is if you knew what went into what makes a medical school ranked, you would laugh. It's a fucking joke. And it all has to do with like how much money has gone towards construction and building and grants and salary. It's all this weird, dark algorithm. But, look at the rankings, take them for what they are. It's a metric, just like standardized tests, and then use it. Take what you need, discard the rest. Do you have specific interests? Some medical schools cater to specific interests. Are you faith-based? There are faith-based medical schools. There are historically black medical schools. There are medical schools that are geared towards social justice. So if you have something that really sings to you as a person, look at that medical school. And then finally go where you feel the love. And this you'll only get on the interview. You'll go to places and you'll meet the medical students, and you're going to feel that pit in your stomach, like, oh my gosh, I don't like these people. Like the idea of staying here for 4 years would be like purgatory. It's like something out of Dante. Or you go to medical school and you're like, I was considering this to be a backup school, but these are my people. This is my tribe. So listen to that. That's important. So just to show you, because there's been a lot of doom and gloom, my career has taken me to a lot of different places. This is me in the civil war in Sudan with Doctors Without Borders. And just being a doctor, I have a cousin who's a rock star, and I always say one of the cool things about being a doctor is you can go anywhere in the world and jam with people. Like we speak the same language, we make music together, we play the same notes. This is being recorded, right? Okay, I can't say the next thing. Did polio eradication. This is me in Uganda near the Congo border with just amazing colleagues doing water sanitation in the Central Plateau of Haiti. This is me in the parks of Santa Barbara doing homeless medicine. I go out to the Navajo Nation every 3 months, and I'm taken into these communities. I'm the doctor. And it's just such an extraordinary, in what other profession can I get in my car, drive 11 hours to the Navajo Nation where 30% don't have running water and electricity and most of the elders don't speak a lick of English, and I'm immediately embraced and brought into the population, and people are telling me about how horrible their day is or how wonderful their day is. And I get to be part of their babies' births and their heart attacks, and it's just, wow, what a privilege. This is me at the Kazakh-Mongolian border, helping to train hospitals. This is me in the Central Plateau of Haiti. I got to work I've been to Antarctica twice as an expedition physician, that there's no possible way I could ever be a scientist in Antarctica because I'm not smart enough. I went to the Palestinian territories to train physicians, worked night shifts alongside my colleagues, and there's probably the strongest coffee I've ever had and the most carbs I've ever eaten. And this is two of my best friends from med school. We got to go to Ghana together with a team from UCSB. This is the street medicine team in Calcutta. I had one of my mentors. I asked him if he'd let me be his medical student for 4 weeks, so I got to go and be his medical student. And I took this beautiful woman who I was dating at the time. She said, hey, you're not on the schedule. I said, yeah, I'm going to India. You want to come? She's like, yeah. She said, only if I can ride an elephant. So we did stop so you can ride an elephant, but then she hung out with me in the slums of Calcutta and took care of lepers' feet, and then that's how I knew. Again, this is only relationship advice. Sometimes you know, and that's and then this is me training Haitian emergency physicians, and this is me when I was a UCSB student, when I was 22 years old. That's Medic 23, and that is all I have to say. I think I went over. But I do want to open it up for no applause because I want to open it up for Chasen. I do want to say this is a picture of my boy because priorities change, and I was all medicine all the time, and now it's all about getting home in time. Like the whole reason I was a little bit late today was because our childcare fell through, and I had to make dinner for my little guy. And this is him, just last week with his grandpa teaching him how to hail a cab in New York. And I don't know what your journey's going to be. There's going to be some scary moments. But it's a really beautiful, beautiful journey. And at that, I'm going to hand everything over to Chasen, and then we'll answer some questions together.
I wish I had that kind of a talk when I was in school, but I wasn't here in Santa Barbara, so I didn't have that opportunity. So my name is Chasen Turnier, and I'm one of the founders of Mountain View Scribe Services. We provide scribe services here in the Santa Barbara and Goleta area. I'm currently acting as the operational director, so I get to come and do things like this and have recruitments and things like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about being a scribe, how it can help you in the future. There are a good number of scribes who are currently Mountain View scribes in the audience, so that's good. You guys don't have to listen to me talk, just turn around or something, I don't know. So those of you who do know what a scribe is, of course you know, but those who do not, a scribe is a member of the healthcare team, and we specialize in documenting patient encounters. And this documentation is different than straight dictation because the scribe is actually present with the provider in the room with the patient, and there's a lot of interaction among the provider and the patient and the scribe. In fact, here in Santa Barbara and Goleta, the scribe will actually be a part of asking the patient some of the questions. So it will give you the opportunity to hone your skills in talking to patients. It's also different because while it's live dictation, there's a component of it that is interpretive. The scribe has to interpret what is going on with the patient and what the provider is going to say, even sometimes before they say it. And so that's the thing that's really important about being a scribe. Again, as Dr. Prystowsky was talking about, the current way of kind of teaching people is, here's a test, memorize this information. There isn't a lot of focus on analytical thinking. And becoming a scribe really does give you those foundational tools to start being analytical and thinking about ways in which you can solve problems. So myself, I became a scribe in 2012. I was a sophomore in college. I was part of that group of 22% of people who decided in their first and second year of college that they wanted to be someone in healthcare. So 2012, I started being a scribe. We were just transitioning from the stone tablets into laptops. No, we had laptops, of course. And I was looking for a job where I didn't need any kind of training beforehand. I didn't have to be getting a certificate. I didn't want to go and do an EMT kind of a program. Maybe I was too lazy. I don't know. But I was looking for something where I could really just get into healthcare, see what it was like, and see what it is to be a physician. I was already almost 2 years into school, and I had never been into a hospital. I had never seen any patients, and I really didn't even know if being in medicine was going to be right for me. I know a lot of physicians who didn't have the opportunity to see medicine before they went to medical school, and let's say that they are not real happy with their career choices now. But you gotta get into a point where you're kind of stuck. You've done all this years of school, you want to stay in it, and you kind of are stuck in it. So being a scribe is really a good way to get the chance to see it before you're really committed to it. I've had some scribes who initially were looking at healthcare and they see blood for the first time in quantity, pass out, and they're like, no, what? I'm not going to be in healthcare. Actually, I had somebody go and they became a sculptor instead, which is, you can't get much further away from healthcare than that. So I came to be a scribe, and it showed me how much importance there is to analytical thinking and being involved with medicine really frontline. Dr. Prystowsky also mentioned that there's respect for clinical experience as a scribe for PA schools especially, but I would say that more and more, year after year, the scribing profession is becoming more and more important and more understood. I think maybe 10 years ago, people would have said, oh, what's a scribe? I don't know what that is. But more and more, it's becoming really quite ubiquitous in the industry, and most schools will take scribe experience as clinical experience. He mentioned that PA schools often require 2,000 hours of clinical experience just to apply, which is true. And I find most scribes are able to get about 1,000 clinical hours per year. So just 2 years of being a scribe can fulfill those hours. And it's not just a matter of just straight fulfilling your hours. Being a scribe is way more than just something to put on your application, something that's good for PA school, something that's good for medical school. The tools that you get as a scribe are really, those are the things that are invaluable. Learning how to think, learning next to physicians. I mean, you could even think of being a scribe as like the way it was before there were medical schools. Before there were medical schools, you would just train with the village doctor. And that's very similar to the way that scribing is set up. You're with a physician all of the time, you're seeing their medical decision making, and you're able to participate in that. And the longer that you work as a scribe, the more you're able to participate in that kind of conversation. You've probably taken all kinds of biology classes where you're like, oh, gram-positive bacteria, so interesting. But like, what does that mean? What does that mean to real life? GFR is low. What does that got to do with anything? But working as a scribe, you have the ability to say, oh, maybe we should do Bactrim for a staph infection with that gram-positive bacteria. It puts into perspective all of the things that you learn in class. It isn't about memorizing for a test. It's actual real-life application. And often you will see things that most people won't ever see. If you're not in healthcare, you're probably never going to see massive traumas or things like that. But also things that many people won't even see until they're a resident or even when they're actually an attending physician. You will have the opportunity to see so much before you even start. And that's really the great part about being a scribe, is that you're there, you can participate in the conversation of medicine and know what's going on.
How many times out through the cycle of not getting in would you recommend? I don't know if this makes sense, but if you get the gist, I would appreciate your thoughts.
You've had a lot of scribes apply to medical school in
Yes.
the last 10 years. I don't know if you want to take a crack at it.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think that there's probably actually been a pretty wide shift in kind of perspectives. When I was first applying to medical school, so that was 2014, when I was a student, you didn't really hear that much about DO schools. And I actually went to school. It was like right down the street from a DO school. My undergrad was actually associated with the DO school with Western University of Health Sciences. And we actually had a matriculation program where you apply your first year and you got right into DO school. And no one ever talked about it. And I wish I had known about it when I was like in my fourth year and it was too late. So I think there was a kind of a point where people were not talking so much about DO schools. You saw there's obviously a lot more allopathic schools than osteopathic schools. I would say it definitely depends on what your focus is. If you want to do something that's super specific, and sometimes people do, they want to work on retinal detachment surgeries or something like that, then an allopathic school is probably going to be better for you. As Dr. Prystowsky mentioned also, don't pick a DO school just because you think you have a better chance to get in. But if you are interested in whole body care, that makes good sense. As far as how much to apply and where to apply, so I personally applied 3 times. And after the 3rd time, I decided that was enough for me. That's just anecdotal. My kind of life perspectives changed also, so I didn't want to keep hitting my head against the same wall. And so there's that. There's your own will to do it. Now, I have a really good friend, and he went to college way late. He was supporting family at home. He didn't get into college until late, and he didn't wind up applying until he was 32. And he just kept applying. He just kept applying. I think he applied like 4 or 5 times, finally got in. He actually did a post-bac program at Rosalind Franklin University in Chicago, and that's a matriculation program. If you apply to that, if you do well in that course, then you actually get into the medical school. Not 100%, but it's like 98% get into the medical school. And so for him, it just made sense to keep going at it. He just wanted it so bad, and he kind of exhausted all of his avenues to do it. So I think it depends on your focus, where you want to be eventually. I think it depends on how committed you are and how willing you are to keep at the journey as well. Was that all of it, or was there anything else I missed?
In its nature was a big question, but it touched a lot of what I was curious about.
I'm going to borrow the... So I'm just going to have the mic because I know people are watching this from home. So, I'm going to mess with you a little bit, Jabril, because I know you and I like you. It's a flawed question, right? Because you're asking like, hey, do I choose Harvard or do you choose, the state school and no one cares? And what do I, and in a lot of ways, where you go is far less than what you do when you get there. And when you're talking about what's the best and the worst kindergarten in the country, let's compare Compton to Montecito, like huge. What's the difference between the best and worst high school? Still pretty big, but less. Once you start getting at universities, it's less. Once you start getting to the elite, to medical schools, the difference between the premier, top-ranked U.S. Neuro Enrolled Report med school and the one that just opened and got its accreditation is actually, from a metric standpoint, Not that much. Is there a big difference in tradition? Yes. Narrative? Yes. Culture? Yes. Geography? Yes. But you're still going to take the licensing exam, USMLE 1 and 2. You're still going to do a clerkship in pediatrics, medicine, surgery. You're still going to deliver babies. You're still going to take out people's appendixes. You're still going to be humiliated on cardiology rounds because you can't read the EKG. Because the EKG looks the same in Milwaukee as it does in New York. And that's what's so beautiful about medicine is when so many students, and this is, you've been programmed to think, I got to follow the script, right? What does the script say? You do well in high school, you get into a good college, right? And then when you get in college, what do? You got to get good grades in college, got to do research, got to kiss up to a professor and get a good letter of recommendation. Maybe you got to be in the right fraternity or sorority. Maybe you got to play sports and you got to get like a ring on your finger. But everyone's got these scripts that they have to follow. And the philosophy part of the question, the reason why your question is bullshit, and I love you, but it's a bullshit question, is because when you start asking the real tough questions about, are you going to feel like an idiot? Yeah. Are you going to be challenged? Yeah. Are you going to cross this threshold where all of a sudden, like, wait a second, this person's suffering and I know what's causing it and I can do something about it. And that's going to be this aha moment that took you 8 years to get to, where you're going to get that funny tingly feeling like, oh my gosh. And then it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you want to start high-fiving and fist-pumping when you realize everyone else is asleep, because that's what normal people do at 2 a.m. And that doesn't matter where you go to school to do that. So that's why a lot of times students ask the wrong question, which is, hey, let's play this hypothetical example, like I get into the top 10 schools I apply to, and I'm inherently wealthy, so it doesn't matter what it costs. Which one should I go to? Play that game. Because when you start playing that game, you're going to realize, well, wait a second, there's other priorities at play here. And you're going to start asking yourself the right questions, which is, which of these schools is going to give me an experience that's part of my narrative that I believe in? A lot of times, Cottage Hospital, we have residents in surgery and medicine. And I remember one of our medicine residents is really, really good. I asked her, like, why'd you do residency here? She said, because my family's in Santa Barbara, and according to the statistics, the reality is that 75% of people will work within 100 miles of where they train. She's like, and I want to end up in Santa Barbara. She's like, and at some point, she figured it out that she could have gotten into the residency program at UCSF, but she didn't want to live in San Francisco, she wanted to live in Santa Barbara, and all of a sudden there's that shift where she stopped following the script and realized, like, hey, what do I want in life? What is going to make me feel fulfilled? Well, I want to be a doctor. I want to heal people. I want to sick people, but I want to heal sick people in Santa Barbara. That's important to me. That's a priority for me. So I'm going to start to adjust my narrative in order to find personal and professional fulfillment, which is a different question because you have been programmed to follow the script, and the script is flawed. The script is wrong. According to the script, all of you will continue to just take on debt, keep taking tests, merit badges, courses, and then ultimately you will die poor, in debt, alone, and with regret. And that's a fail. That's a failed life. What you want to do is say, I want to heal people. And I want to be a doctor. And I want to work with people who look this way or speak this language. Or I want to work with this anatomy. Or I want to work with people who are going through this phase of their life, where they're very, very young or they're very, very old. Because that just makes me smile when I wake up in the morning, because I get to do that today for a living. And then you realize there's lots of different paths you can go down to find that. And you need to find the path that ultimately is going to give you your life fulfillment. Because on your deathbed, no one cares what your MCAT score was, right? On your deathbed, you're going to remember the amazing people you met, the camaraderie, the solidarity, the people you helped, the people you lost, the people you wanted to help but couldn't, the people who didn't want your help but you could help. Like, these are going to be the stories that both haunt you and enlighten you. And that's the path of medicine. And it doesn't matter where you go to do it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm sorry I called you out on that, but I knew you could take it.
pamphlet, we will be hosting MCAT study group 5 p.m. on Wednesdays right here at Good Space. So every Wednesday until the end of May, the space will be free for those studying for the MCAT. This will be self-facilitated. So, first meeting, you guys can arrange what you want to do, what's your intentions. And it's also good to have that support system. Friends that you have that aren't part of pre-med, they don't fully understand you. They don't fully get you, Jason said, you're going to have to say no to those friends because you got to study. You got to say no to those friends because you got stuff to do. But hopefully this cultivates a good community and just somewhere for you to go to and people that understand you and are on the same boat as you. Hopefully that helps.